Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if two people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week, and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travellers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder Rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming to you as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by alargemanappears.com. I'm your host, your hypodermic needle in the cheek on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined as I am every week by my faithful co-host. He's Staggerly Malone. Lee, how are you this week?
I'm good. I mean, I haven't been powerbombed on any cinder blocks this week, so, you know, comparatively speaking, compared to some people, I've been absolutely, you know, joyous this week.
You did have your head caved in with a chair, but that's just a weekly occurrence for you because lip to the better half, like
that just happens on the daily, you know.
And the wife doesn't shave down the chairs in the Malone house, I'll tell you that.
Oh no, there's no gimmick chairs in this house. You don't have any creative services around here.
I've been having an alright week. It's the kind of like, it's that tough crash landing back to work after my lengthy absence. Although I am going on holidays again in like 3 weeks, so like that is keeping me going.
Fucking hell, fucking Rich Craich over here.
I know, right? We do have to like get it while we can. Like, this might be Emma's last time getting on a plane for quite a while. So this is our chance to do it before we are laden with baby come March. So might as well. Going to do I think 5 days in Prague. Although I was alerted that not only has the snow for the season already started record early in Prague this year, but also there is warning of historic levels of flooding for the next 2 weeks.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm hoping like there'll still be a week's window for that to level off, and hopefully it will. But look, if the holiday is me just like lying down inside for most of the day and then just making excursions out to go and get very cheap dinners, that's not a bad holiday either, you know.
Sounds like your ideal, actually.
I did, you know what? It really is, because I did a lot of the... Look, in between London and my other holiday in Tremor, I did a lot of nothing. But yeah, particularly in London, I think you find yourself, like when we were over there, you move around a lot more than you think you will. Mm-hmm. Something I found that really helped me this time, that helped with like the tiredness and the fatigue of doing the London thing when you're not used to it, is I drank a lot of fucking water while I was going. because between the heat, the underground, and everything, like I find myself getting very dehydrated when I'm over there.
I do think that was one issue I found on the Saturday when I got a really bad migraine. I think it was a combination of everything, and probably being slightly dehydrated as well.
I just thought you had your fill of us after I dragged you to Jack White's record shop for the second straight year. You're just like, I'm fucking done with this dude.
Oh no, that by then the fucking headache had kicked in, and I was like, I was trying to find ways to prevent it going full blown migraine. Yeah. So,
do you want to credit the painkillers with curing you, or the mighty plate of barbecue we had? Because that seemed to give you a lot of life.
I mean, that gave me life. I mean, I actually got the smallest plate compared to the rest of us that were in the restaurant.
Yeah,
and I still struggled to finish what I had.
But banger milkshakes as well. Shout out to Bodines.
I was just going to say that the milkshakes were the star of the show this year. Well, actually, no. In saying that, the star of the show was apparently the restaurant manager.
Oh yes, looming and leering over us. Such a weird guy that we actually full on remembered him from last year when you and I were there. Just standing over him. Just standing over us trying to get us clear at the table. Like, the place wasn't even full. Like, what are you talking about,
and
mate?
we were there all of 20 minutes and he's leering at us after trying to eat our foods.
We're still buying things as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had just bought a round of milkshakes at the end following your lead. Yes. And there was talk of getting I know desserts. Jack and Brony were thinking about getting proper desserts. And he did himself out of money there to fill seats with no one.
Now, to be
very
fair,
odd man.
To be fair, I am glad we left when we did, because we found that incredible cinema.
Oh my god, yeah. We ended up having we couldn't, because it was a Saturday night and we were in Soho. There was fuck all bars that had room for us to sit down in,
or that we wanted to go into, really.
Yeah, but Jack had the brainwave of we had gone to see the Kneecap movie in the Curzon cinema. God, I can't even remember where it was now. But
the one right by Chinatown is where we ended up.
That's the one where we ended up that night, and it's great because the Curzon cinemas have full cocktail bars in them. So we essentially just sat in a fancy cinema lobby at a cocktail bar having whiskey sours for a couple of hours to get out of the kind of the hustle and bustle, and it was great.
Surrounded by Republican propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, I felt really at home all weekend, and that's Irish Republican as opposed to Red State Republican to our American listeners. Entirely different concept.
Totally different type of republicanism.
Yeah, people are gonna tune in thinking you talk about, I was great in a bar surrounded by Republican memorabilia, and they're gonna go, God, I thought these guys were fairly left leaning, and then they went hard into. Can't believe Lee voted for Trump.
I can't wearing my red "Make America Great Again" hat in central London.
You are wearing a red T-shirt, and I can't see what's written on it.
No, it's a Real Madrid jersey.
Okay. Yeah, we'll allow that. Right. One thing I want to talk about that I kind of hinted at there in my little intro, is we had another AEW pay-per-view. Since last we spoke, my friend, and you and I haven't really spoken about it because this is our first time on the air since the pay-per-view happened. It was All Out 2024, and I don't know about you, but I feel once again, I think the narrative coming into it was, God, it's very little time to build a pay-per-view. I wonder how good it's going to be, and then it turns out it's one of the best pay-per-view cards of the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think. No matter who you are and what your stance was on AEW coming into August into All In, I think you have to say they pretty well knocked it out of the park, having two very different pay-per-views so close together. And the feel for Wembley very much felt like a stadium show.
Yeah.
And All In very much felt like a blow-off pay-per-view. There was so much that was paid off on All Out.
It felt like a blood feud pay-per-view as well. Do you know what I mean? The Wembley was all about giving us those big kind of happy fan moments. I hate using the word moments in wrestling because it's such a loaded term. But you know what I mean? It was all building to sending the fans home happy. Whereas I think All Out was all building to sending the fans home slightly disturbed. And there was a lot of feeling of like there were some triumphant moments, on it, but also there's a great feeling of like, that feeling at the end of Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, fuck, evil has won this chapter. That kind of like feeling in your stomach that things are taking a dark turn, but you can't wait to see where it goes.
No, because I'm not a Star Wars guy, so no, I
I'm
don't
not
know
even,
that feeling.
But yeah. But there is that, like, between the main event, what happened there, and the big Mox angle, like, there was definitely like an undercurrent of like kind of sinister shit that was fantastic, because to me it has made watching the TV and the follow up to this pay-per-view much more compelling than I had felt it had come out of a lot of pay-per-views this past year and a half.
I 100% agree with you. I think the Dynamite post All Out felt essential viewing for anyone that was invested post All Out. Like, it's like you couldn't miss what was going to be the follow up. And again, I think they had a pretty good episode of Dynamite, but like the stuff that they did well at All Out, I feel like they knocked out of the park on Dynamite with the follow-ups, like Mox's promo, Hangman and stuff like that. But you brought up Mox and the angle with Danielson.
Yeah.
How do you feel, first of all, as somebody who isn't a parent yet, how do you feel about the plastic bag angle?
I feel pretty good about it, Lee. What you got to remember is I'm not going to say I totally get it. I was about to say I totally get the concerns of the pearl clutching for parents over it. But then again, I also don't, because we were the generation raised on incredible amounts of TV violence and Mortal Kombat and Grand Theft Auto and different things like that. And I honestly think that, again, I know if I sat like my child down personally to watch AEW, I bear a little bit of responsibility of that, because yes, it's wrestling, but the company has never been geared as wrestling for children.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Much as
I was just going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, like I was 10 years old, closing in on 11, when... Actually, no, a better example would be I was 8 years old when Mankind went off the cell. Mm-hmm. And I watched that. But, like, whoever let me watch that had to bear some of the responsibility for that. And WWF at the time wasn't marketed towards me, but we were all watching it. You know what I mean? And, again, as somebody who isn't completely... I actually listened to... Shout out to Garrett and Liam. I listened to a tremendous segment from their show talking about the incuriosity of this generation of wrestling fans. And I was reminded of that with the pearl clutching around this, because, like, have people not heard of Terry Funk? Like, this wasn't like a new low for violence in wrestling. This is literally a Terry Funk bit that Mox and Eddie Kingston have both been begging Tony Khan to let them do. You know, there's no new ideas in wrestling, just genius reinterpretations of the greats.
And it's funny that you bring up Terry Funk, because this was like something I said in the VOW Slack when this topic came up, that like you have just said there, AEW has never been a family orientated wrestling show, whether on TV or pay-per-view. It has never aimed to be the wrestling you sit down with your child to watch. If you, as a parent, allow your son or daughter at whatever age to sit down and watch these shows with them, you have to understand there is going to be stuff that might make you uncomfortable, because AEW has always done that stuff. And
well, this is what we're saying is, like, it's not specifically geared towards children. We are not saying children don't watch it.
No.
But that's a different thing from it's for children.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I will always say, like, I'm somewhat of an outlier, as, you know, I'm a hardcore wrestling fan, and I don't mean hardcore as in the wrestling style, as in I'm deep into the wrestling world and all that's going on and aware of history and things like that. And I get that my son isn't the typical young wrestling fan, but also I was bringing my son to wrestling shows from a young age. He was 4 or 5 going to wrestling shows. And yes, they were family orientated wrestling shows, but I understood that he may see somebody really hurt themselves on those shows, because guess what? Shit happens in wrestling rings that isn't always controllable. I had this argument on the VAW Discord this week. The worst injury that was probably sustained on All Out was when Chris Statlander landed on Willow Nightingale's head, falling to the floor. That was probably the worst thing that happened on that show.
But also, like, in terms of, you and I have both been to a huge amount of wrestling shows together over the years. And I genuinely think that a couple of the worst injuries, like maybe 3 or 4 of the top 5 injuries we've seen on shows together, live and in person, were on spots you would see on family-friendly shows. Do you know? I think of, like, there's one wrestler I can think of who will remain nameless.
Yeah, it's the one I thought of instantly,
did a dive to the outside and completely separated their shoulder. We have another wrestler who split the entirety of the top of their head open on just a fairly standard dive outside the ring once. Several, like, fairly gruesome looking injuries, and it was all on fairly standard stuff. Like, it is a mode of entertainment for which you need to expect that even in the family-friendly environment you may see some shit.
But, like, and this was going to be my point, like, I get that my son isn't typical in the fact that when he was 5, maybe pushing 6, like, I came home from work one day and he said to me, "Dad, do you know who Terry Funk is?" And I was like, of course I know who Terry Funk is. Why do you know who Terry Funk is, and why are you asking? He's like, I was looking up YouTube videos. And, like, he explained, and, he told me why he's watching. And I explained, okay, you have to understand. And, like, this is what you have to do as a parent. You have to explain and have discussions with your children about what they see. And if you put limits on them, you have to know what your personal limit is for them to view. Like, I have explained always to my son, like, from a very young age, wrestling is not, I hate saying not wrestling is not real, but I've explained that wrestling is predetermined. But what they do hurts, and it's real.
But the hazards are real.
No, but, like, and I explained that from very young. Like, he sees videos of Mick Foley and Terry Funk having an exploding barbed wire deathmatch. And I'll be like, that is real barbed wire. That is cutting them up. This shit is real. You can't go out and do this. But what nowadays is people see this and like, oh my God, I can't let my child see this because I don't want to have that uncomfortable discussion. But that's fine. That is your choice. But AEW aren't the parent here. It's up to you to decide what is too much for your children to see, not the company.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of, as time has gone on, I'm not saying there's no responsibility on the person airing the program. Like, if it was a thing where the show was marketed at children, and then you see someone putting a needle through someone's cheek. Do you
absolutely.
know what I mean? Like, there is that responsibility to be honest in what you're broadcasting. But I do feel like we've entered a time where, and not every part, it's a small minority of people are willing to accept no responsibility for what they are getting into. Even if it is, like, absolutely said up front. Like, what do you think is if you know anything about this feud for this main event, and obviously you must if you've paid $50 for it on pay-per-view, like, what do you think is going to happen in that match? Like, that, you know what I mean? It's not going to be like holding hands doing flippy doos in that match.
Their last match ended when Hangman had lost so much blood and he was being choked with a chain around the turnbuckle. What did you think was going to happen? Like, anyway,
but a great show.
Look, I I loved the cage match. I don't think it was as good as the Texas Step match.
Yeah.
But I do think it was I thought it gave off this more violent, like real violence kind of feel, and like proper hatred. Like, whereas the Texas Step match was like wrestling hatred, this felt like proper, real, just visceral hate, and less of a stunt show. I felt.
I feel like it was an essential step in what I hope will be a gradual course correction of what the company should be and what the mission statement is. And I am heartened by the stuff they're doing with Danielson. I'm heartened by this Swerve Hanger feud. I am very heartened by the return of Moxley to a prominent role as probably, like, I'm feeling he's the guy that takes the title and retires Danielson ultimately.
Yep.
And then 2025 is the year of Mox as the top heel in the company. And I feel like as long as he's top heel, as long as he's got a say in what he's doing, the stuff at the top of the card is going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's getting away from the brochachos, the stuff that really bogged us down. There's still stuff that needs to be tweaked, needs to be reset, needs to be moved along. But, you know, if I look at where we're at compared to like October, November last year, anything pre-C2, I think we're getting there. And that's good.
You need just look at Dynamite this week. And I feel like, you know, I almost feel bad for the people that have hand-waved this company because they believe it can't serve, you know, what they want in their wrestling. Because, like we said, over the past month, they've just had Bryan Danielson main event the stadium and win the world title. They had Nigel McGuinness return on said show. They've had John Moxley choke a man out with a bag over their head. They've had Swerve and Hangman absolutely murder each other in a cage. They've had Willow and Stat have one of the best hardcore matches you'll ever see, men or women. Just an incredible match.
And look, is there still plenty I'd change? Yes. Is there still plenty where I'm like, God, I wish they had a bit closer attention to detail on things? I'm not somebody that's ever sat there and claimed I'm loving every minute of every episode of TV I tune in for. I honestly don't know if in my entire life I've watched an entire episode of televised wrestling that I've enjoyed the whole lot of. But I think once the balance is right, that by the end of it I'm gone. I've seen some shit I really liked on that show. I'm quite happy, and once things are always tipping closer and closer towards, you know, my vision of what I want to see on TV, then I'll be happy.
But look what they've set up just on this Dynamite alone. They've set up Mox Darby, Mox Danielson, Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher against the Bucks, Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. Whether it happens at Grand Slam or not, that match is going to happen now. We know that for sure. They have Takeshita eyeing up Okada and Ospreay. They have set the wheels in motion for so much stuff just on that one episode of Dynamite.
Yeah,
that
my fantasy booking for that Takeshita is that he wins the C2. Like that's that.
I loved the idea that Joe had a couple of months ago about Garcia being the one.
Yeah,
but obviously it depends on what's happening with Danny. But yeah, no, they're obviously doing Okada Takeshita at some point. And hopefully this is fucking, you know, a year into his run at this point, that this is the beginning of Okada being treated as, you know, Okada.
Yeah. But I think the only two thing, like, there's maybe three things I would 86 in the company right now, and I'd be absolutely laughing. And it's the learning tree. I would get rid of the book stuff tomorrow. And get Okada away from them, and I would fast forward to the end of whatever this Mariah May stuff is, because
it ain't working.
Absolutely flat.
Just get the title onto Jamie Hayter. Get it there quick. Anyway, we should say, actually, speaking of coming off All Out, that for the first time on our Patreon at largemanappears.com, I had a written piece available for everyone heading into Dynamite, all about what was next for the Hangman. So that's available to check out. But I suppose I believe
you made that available at the $1 tier as well. You're the €1 tier.
I did. I made it available for all patrons at whatever tier they're at. But since I brought that up, we may as well do our Patreon plug right here. Yes. So we have the next 2 months of our Patreon planned to a T. As coming up to close out this month, we will have a return to Rehash of the Champions that we discussed on the last show. We will have Rehash 11 to close out September on the Patreon. I believe you're going to do a solo audio.
I am. That will be due by the end of the month.
Yep. And then as we head into October, we will have a very special TRL. We won't reveal what that is quite yet, but we will have a TRL as chosen by Joshua Gavin, one of our patrons. And then to close out October, our second show will be our return to what we like to call our Ketaween, as we will have Days of Thunder at the Movies reviewing Scream 4.
And it's not a good one, folks.
I've never seen it, so bear that in mind.
Yeah, it's the one I've seen the least, and I love this franchise. This is the one I go back to the least.
And then also in October, I will have a solo audio as well at some point. So yeah, we have loads planned, and it will all be coming to you at largemanappears.com for just €5, as Dave says.
Not to mention, like, we will also be building on the timeline towards Starrcade and beyond into the year 2000. And of course, we actually do have, we're not announcing it yet, but we do pretty much have November plotted out as well. So there's a lot of really good stuff cooking. We're getting stacked up on these shows as well, in the anticipation that next year I will be disappearing for a little while upon the birth of my child. And we want to make sure that there's no interruption to your regularly scheduled Thunder, or God forbid, Lee has to figure out how to edit.
That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, we were supposed to have a crash course in how to edit podcasts when we were in London, but by the time, what was it, like 2:30 when we finished our live stream?
Yes.
Post show. So yeah, that just went out the window. But yeah, go to largemanappears.com if you like hearing more of us talk absolute breeze. And as well, we're closing in on about 2.5 years worth of 2 to 3 podcasts per month. Over there. And it's also very handy because the way we have our RSS feed on Patreon is that you get absolutely every show we do on a single feed over there. So it's very, very convenient for you, the listener at home. Anyway, shall we go to 1999, friend?
Let's go back to our youth. Well, my youth, anyway.
Yeah. What do you mean, my youth? What do you mean, youth? I was younger than you. That makes no sense. Jesus Christ. Starting off good. We'll go to the Observer. And this is the Observer from, I believe, the 6th of December. And we start off with the Observer official poll, the real taste test, the real tastemakers voting on what they thought of WCW Mayhem. It's not good reading for Russo and Ferrara here. Thumbs up 21.5%, thumbs down 65.9%, thumbs in the middle 12.6%. Your best match, Chris Benoit, Jeff Jarrett, 79%. And Chris Benoit, Bret Hart, 55 votes. Worst match, David Flair, Kimberly with 69.
Nice.
Insert very 1999 joke there. Disco Inferno versus Evan Courage is 34. And Vampiro versus Berlin, 11 votes.
Come on, give him his proper name. It's Alex Berlin.
Alex Berlin. So yeah, they weren't big fans of that show amongst the Observer readership. Interesting. things are happening this week in the world of wrestling. It is finally the time where the Parents Television Council struck a blow against WWF. This is the week where all the sponsors start leaving.
Oh, okay.
Over concerns of the product being too racy, too violent, all this sort of stuff. That would ultimately spawn in a kind of by 2000, whereas it's not like there isn't violence and there isn't sex on WWF's TV, but for 2000 it's a bit more tempered and it's a bit more kind of restricted to pay-per-view.
Yes.
Rather than what you're seeing every week on Raw and SmackDown. There will ultimately be some fallout with that regard in WCW as well. We will get to a little bit of that on next week's show. But I do think it is worth noting, and obviously on screen the other way in which it manifests is that Vince McMahon, never one to not hold a grudge, would ultimately bring in a parody act of the Parents Television Council next year. The infamous Right to Censor organization would show up not too far into the future, I believe. So we can all look forward to that.
Yeah.
I think. But I guess that the whole idea is that it's seen as, even by the standards of late 90s TV, which is the heyday of like Jerry Springer and stuff like this, there is a particular trashiness associated with pro wrestling that, I mean, I guess has really stuck around for most of the intervening 25 years because, yes, WWE now have a lot of big sponsors, like, you know, they got Mattel on board in 2010 and stuff like that, but in terms of the amount that they're able to get from ad sales, it is still a problem for pro wrestling compared to other live sports and entertainment.
Well, I mean, it's timely that you bring that up because the night we are recording this is in fact the night that WWE SmackDown returns to USA Network.
Yes.
And one of the reasons that Fox cancelled the show is that they could not make ad revenue off the WWE SmackDown show on Fox. And, you know, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It was very much cancelled by Fox.
Yeah. Well, that's it, yeah. And so, like, this is a kind of... It was never a huge problem because in the 80s and 90s, because even though there was a lot of violent wrestling in the territories, I think it was still seen as something that, you know, we've remarked on the Rehash of the Champions shows. It's like there were some blood-drenched matches happening down there in the 80s, and yet still it was families going to these shows. And it was a very family-oriented form of entertainment. And I think when you add to that violence a sense of salaciousness, I think that was maybe when it tipped too much into something that conservative America wasn't willing to let go by anymore.
Also, there was, as the kind of car crash TV became popular with certain demographics, there was a push in the conservative circles to really kind of expand and make their voice heard in the mid-90s or late 90s that people kind of forget about. Like there was the whole what was that church that was pretty well known in America that fucking they would protest against everything.
That would be the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, Westboro Baptist,
Moving on to other news, Steve Austin's career as an active wrestler may not be in grave jeopardy based on results of further testing. Another of the company's three hottest stars, Mick Foley, also has his in-ring future apparently limited. Austin, real name Steve Williams, who's 34 at the time, the biggest merchandise seller in the history of pro wrestling, is expected to undergo a spinal operation shortly that may save his career. No date is set for operation under Dr. Henry Bauman of the Cleveland University Hospital, considered the best spinal surgeon in the country. Surgery is said to be similar to an operation Bauman recently did on baseball superstar Cal Ripken Jr., who's expected to be able to play next season. While the demands on the spine in pro wrestling are very different from those in baseball, it's considered a much better possibility this week that Austin can return to wrestling as opposed to last week, when it was generally believed, based on preliminary diagnosis of his neck and back problems, that he had already wrestled his last match. So obviously we know, with the benefit of hindsight, that he does in fact return just shy of a year from now, from injury at Survivor Series. Is his first match back? Is the Triple H match his first?
Yeah, and
official match?
that was more of a brawl than a match.
Yeah, and that is kind of how a lot of his career, the rest of his career, would pan out. Like, he's clearly, whereas he's Steve Austin, one of the best pro wrestling minds to ever step in a ring, and he still had some really enjoyable, great matches in the remainder of his run. I think it's clear to anybody that watched the Steve pre-first neck injury and pre the injuries this year, it's not the same guy. And the clock is very much ticking from when he gets back. It's
amazing to read that when you consider the matches he would go on to have with Kurt Angle and the Benoit series and things like that. The one thing that always stands out to me is when he had the feud with Benoit, and he insisted on taking the 10 German suplexes in a row, just to prove a point.
Yeah.
That's the kind of pettiness I can get behind.
Yeah. No one was telling him he was done. It's funny because I recently watched the Last Dance again.
Oh yeah,
and there's a very similar like psychopathic drive in him as there is in Michael Jordan. That like, you do not get to tell me what I can and can't do. You know, that idea, like, this kind of reminds me, it's not an injury, but when Jordan returns from baseball and people says like he's not got it anymore, and just he uses that as the bit between his teeth. It's a very similar, like I said, psychopathic level of commitment to prove people wrong. The other thing, I'm not going to read too much through it, but if you're somebody that likes the Meltzer obits, there's a lengthy obituary for Hiro Matsuda in this issue. So if you're somebody that's into your history of Japanese wrestling, there's plenty of anecdotes in there, plenty of references to the likes of Riki Dozan and plenty others. Something that I think, even if you're not somebody that dives too much into the history of wrestling, you may know from the silver screen. The wrongful death lawsuit from the heavily publicized January 1996 murder of former Olympic gold medalist David Schultz was settled out of court over the weekend. DuPont chemical heir Jean DuPont was found guilty of killing Schultz, who won a gold medal in the 1984 Olympics and was generally considered the most highly respected American wrestler of his generation. In the trial, DuPont was declared mentally ill and is serving a 13 to 30 year sentence. The lawsuit was settled out of court the day before the civil trial was set to begin. The amount of the settlement was kept sealed, but media reports the figure agreed to in excess of $35 million. So if you don't know this story, it is very sad, very fascinating, and ultimately became a very lauded Hollywood movie in Foxcatcher. So, like, obviously this is a story we would have heard of because, like, again, this was a story Meltzer would talk about at the drop of a hat over the years. So, like, I think I knew about the Team Foxcatcher stuff a long time before there was ever a film in the works because of Dave. What else do we have here? Karl Gotch, 75, legendary shooter and known in Japan as the god of pro wrestling, currently in a lot of pain, needing hip replacement, to the point he can no longer walk his dog, which is quite sad. We got a couple other bits here, if you'll just bear with me. Oh yes, we've got our WCW news briefs. This is a particularly lengthy Observer, all of 40 pages here.
Oh God.
Dave was on a tear. Oh yes, this is really interesting. So I wanted to talk about what WCW thinks its plans right now are for 2000. And I think this will be fascinating to see what goes and what stays. Okay, as you can see, I assume to parse this, as you can see on TV. As you can see on TV, the main idea for the top angle for the year 2000 is tradition versus the powers that be, with Hogan, Dustin Rhodes, Duggan, etc. Don't know how Flair is supposed to figure in. Larry Zbyszko is tentatively figured in with the idea that the powers that be will hate his announcing and fire him, and he'll come back as a wrestler. Although the feeling is Zbyszko, who, by the way, how old do you think Larry Zbyszko is looking at him on TV at this time?
He's late 40s, right?
He's only 45.
No.
That's a fucking day of the road alone, you kid.
I tell you, fucking grown up, not grown up, but being, you know, a young adult in the 80s had to be rough on everybody.
Yeah. He'd want sizable money to return as a regular wrestler, and having been out of it for so many years, it's questionable what he'll be able to do as more than a one-time deal in the ring. It wasn't that long ago that Zbyszko was over tremendously as a face, teasing a feud with Scott Hall forever, as we talked about. When he finally wrestled Hall, it was only a few minutes into the match when the fans turned on him, which we also remember as well. So that's interesting, because I think a lot of the figures that are mentioned there as part of this big angle don't really feature. But that idea of the powers that be versus tradition would essentially survive a Russo firing into a second Russo tenure to become New Blood versus Millionaires Club.
Yes.
So that is an interesting one. That's a long-term bit of direction that they probably do abandon in the interim in between Russo tenures.
But then his big idea when he comes back,
he does straight away.
Yeah.
At this point, we talked about the Tori Wilson and her potentially getting her bag finally. Tori Wilson's character has now been dropped after a contract dispute. She was looking for $250,000 per year in a 3-year deal. And Dave said, all I can say is if they had any clue how to market, she would be a deal at that price. What I thought was interesting, and I hadn't seen this mentioned before, if you look at how the ratings rise and fall based on her appearance, her worth from a rating standpoint, and we know the company lives and dies on that, she is somewhere between, her drawing power is somewhere in between Sting and Ric Flair.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and they are on $1.6 million and $800,000 respectively a year. And also like Scott Hall as well on 1.6. It's amazing that like Sting and Scott Hall are on 1.6 and Ric Flair is on $800,000 a year. I just thought that was absolutely crazy. Do we have any more WCW news briefs here worth talking about? So when Bret Hart won the title in Toronto, the kids in the ring were 3 of Bret's 4 children, as mentioned, but the other children celebrating him were in fact Wayne Gretzky's children.
Oh, okay.
And part of me wonders, did WCW even know that? Because Lord knows they would have spaffed a tremendous amount of money to have the Great One show up on their show.
Nah, they wouldn't, because it's WCW, and why would they do something like that when the show is in Canada for the first time?
Yeah. I guess that's it, yeah. Like, they do spend a lot of money on celebrities for no obvious gain, but
yes,
also they underserve Canada to a tremendous degree,
yes.
So they have to keep living that gimmick, yeah.
They would have Gretzky show up in fucking Denver or something like that.
Rey Mysterio and Ernest Miller both underwent knee surgery from Dr. Jim Andrews in Birmingham this past week. Mysterio's surgery was taped for possible airing on television and was considered a success. Rey's actual injury was the same torn ACL he had before. He injured it doing the movie, blaming it on not having proper time to warm up before being sent out to do a scene. He was doing a spot that called for a Frankensteiner off the top rope, landed in a squat position, and immediately heard the knee snap. He said he didn't want reconstructive surgery because he felt Russo and Ferrera were giving him a chance, something previous bookers hadn't, but they told him to take the time off because they wanted him back at 100%. So yeah, that's what's going on there. We have a couple of interesting bits here. We have Kidman missed the weekend shows because of a neck injury that it's been bothering him for some time, and he's been working through it, but it's progressively gotten worse. Eddie Guerrero will be out of action for about 2 weeks as he needs arthroscopic surgery on his elbow to remove bone chips from all the hard landings doing frog splashes plus years of weight training. When he wrestled Kidman on the 11/22 Nitro, he was in tremendous pain and his elbow was badly swollen. As we know, this would still be bothering him when they showed up in WWF.
Yeah,
so
because he blows out on his first night.
Yes, we have essentially seen the last of Eddie Guerrero as an active participant in WCW now. The plan for Roddy Piper.
God, there's a plan.
There is a plan. We will talk a bit more about Roddy later. Is to referee short term, probably just building to refereeing the Hart versus Goldberg Starrcade match, after which point he's supposed to have a regular or semi-regular role on television doing Piper's Pit, which is an interview segment he'll host, reprising the role that first got him over in 1984-85. He is in so much pain from all his injuries, he may not wrestle again. I have got news for you, David Meltzer. This is not even nearly the last time we would see him wrestle. Or if he does, it will be very rare, which is closer to the truth. At one point, the Evan Courageous versus Saturn match on Nitro was supposed to be a cruiserweight title match. Saturn was supposed to kill him, but not win clean. Probably a bunch of run-ins. Somewhere along the way, they decided Saturn wasn't a cruiserweight and had him squash Courageous instead. Brilliant. Christina Lawn, aka Kimona, is now expected to sign here this week. Basically, it's been Terry Taylor trying to get her in, and when Terry Taylor switched companies, the odds of her coming in increased as the company he switched to. Basically, WCW is trying to now stock up on women. Now, you know the way we talk about who has the most devastating... Well, sometimes people do. Online. Who has the most devastating looking chokeslam in the business?
Yes.
There was a really funny one. Somebody in WWF that had the most WWE currently, who had a basic ass choke slam, was getting gift to bits this week, and they were like, "Isn't this the most devastating choke slam you ever heard?" Well, let me tell you about the Walls choke slam here. Vampiro's actual injuries from the choke slam from the wall on the Mayhem pay-per-view were a mild concussion, 2 hairline rib fractures, and a bruised collarbone. That's a fucking choke slam, my friend.
That is what you call power.
Yeah.
I think we did talk about the landing he had on the choke slam was pretty gnarly, but yeah, that's that's devastating.
Like, that nearly killed him stone dead. The latest Insane Clown Posse news: they had a meeting with WCW in Detroit on 11/22 about returning, which from reports did not go well. But they were still going to Denver to get back in, since WWF basically closed the door on them and ECW hasn't expressed any interest. So it's like they stormed out of the meeting and then went elsewhere. Nowhere else wants them, and they're coming back tail between their legs.
Yeah.
That's gotta suck. There's not much then in the WWF news from what I remember. Oh yes, interesting. How something can slip between the fingers of WCW. Fitness model Trish Stratus, who was backstage at Mayhem and has worked on the Law Wrestling Radio Internet show, has now been signed this week to a 3-year developmental deal.
I didn't know she worked on Law.
Yeah. With the idea she'll be an in-ring wrestler with the proviso that there is no nudity involved. She knows who she's dealing with from day one here. She has turned down offers for magazine layouts and fitness nudity layouts in the past. She has been in many bodybuilding magazine covers. Generally, the Canadian-based Muscle Mag International features her prominently, including on last month's cover. Terry Taylor had talked with Stratus about coming to WCW, and there had even been talks with Raven about her coming to ECW. So Raven's trying to sign her for ECW, Terry Taylor's trying to sign her for WCW. She got one look at both companies and went, "Fuck you."
It was probably one look at both men and went, no.
Yeah. yeah. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting one for the WWF there.
Trish was still to this day getting booked internationally to do like the con circuit.
Yeah. She would quite literally start training in WWF next week, because it's a news note in next week's Observer that she starts training. So like they pretty much like, not that they know what they have in terms of superstar quality straight away, but like they waste no time getting her ready to be on TV.
Isn't she on TV in like February, I want to say?
She's very soon. She's on TV. Yeah, I can't remember exactly when. But she's not in because we're like a month away from that hideous Miss Rumble.
She's not in that.
And I
no.
feel like if she'd been
but
on
she's
TV,
at Mania.
she would be featured in that. She is at Mania,
Yeah.
so it's somewhere in that February March period. She must debut.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we can delay no further. Let's get into this Thunder. This is Thunder episode 90 from Topeka, Kansas. 2nd of December 1999. We have a 2.0 rating, so we're up by 0.2 this week. Tenay lets us know straight away, and this is Lee, I remember the Revolution as a stable, as we said when they got together. I think everybody from around our age remembers the Revolution. I do not remember that they declared themselves their own sovereign nation.
Oh, really?
The end of this run, I completely forgot about this. So this was quite a shock to the system to start off the show.
Yeah, this is the Revolution I remember vividly, is the sovereign state revolution. And
see, things are so messy around the time with like between Douglas and Eddie getting injured, and then the lads leaving to the WWF, and Shane getting like hastily repackaged as repackages the franchise again, and we should point out it's all a mess.
We should point out that by the time this Thunder airs, Mayhem is 10 days ago, so there has been 2 Nitros.
Yes.
So we have missed a lot.
Fucking loads happened. But
yes.
I actually feel, and I think this is a running theme of the next 2 Thunders, Lee, as exhausting as the Nitro recaps are, they are actually trying to tell us what happened on Nitro.
Yes, they are.
They are not necessarily succeeding in conveying all the ideas from Nitro, but they are making more of an effort than they did during the Nash or Bischoff eras.
Yes, they actually feel like 2 coherent shows that are working together to advance storylines instead of here's Nitro and oh yeah, by the way, here's some people for Thunder. It very much feels like we have Nitro and Thunder.
Yes. And I think what helps is the 3 Thunders now on the run up this week, next week, and the go home show for Starrcade. None of them are the pre-tape back half of a double shot. There's no double shots for the rest of the year. So I think that helps as well. Because it doesn't just feel like they did one big taping and here's all the matches that were cut out of the first one. So we've also been told that Sid Vicious and Goldberg have joined forces, which we'll see more about later. And Jarrett apparently hit Mike Tenay with the acoustic equalizer on Monday, which we'll also see.
I was just going to say that should be an interesting point for our good friends Garrett and Liam, because 1999 in WCW was in fact the beginning of the Mike Tenay versus Jeff Jarrett feud.
Indeed, secret origins here on Thunder in December 99. We start off with the WCW Hardcore title match with our champion Norman Smiley defending against the now identified Wall. The large wall has appeared finally. We get a flashback to Jerry Flynn fighting. Oh, this is right. Okay. So, one of the things we have to add to the Russo tropes is that a show cannot happen on television without at least one backstage brawl happening.
But normally,
if not multiple.
I was just going to say, but normally at least 3 of them.
Yes. So immediately in this first match, we get a flashback to Nitro as Jerry Flynn and the Wall were fighting backstage. Berlin came to help him out, and the Wall was big mad about it. Very, very funny that pretty much as soon as they identified the Wall by name, they immediately started teasing splitting up these guys who have been together for all of 8 weeks.
Yeah,
on television. I don't know. Which do you think it was? Do you think that, or maybe a combination of both? The options on the table are they saw Alex Berlin as a dud straight away. They saw that maybe there was some potential in the Wall, or a little bit of both.
Oh, it's definitely a little bit of both. Because Berlin has flopped fucking hard. But you can
talk about like from match 1, like.
But you can also see that there's a little bit something there with the Wall.
And look, he's not a guy who would ever be like. It's weird. He's got this anti-charisma because he's not charismatic.
No,
he's not good in the ring. But he has a combination of, like, everything I've heard about the man is that people really liked him.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
And he is physically imposing. He is a large man who has appeared.
Yes,
And
very much
it's
so.
wrestling. So bookers in wrestling will always see if they can wring $1 out of the big man.
Also, apparently he has a shoot choke slam, so that's always good too.
He does, yeah. He just shoot choke slamming people until he gets a push.
You know
So
what?
fair enough.
That would be some backstage segments to shoot choke slamming people.
Yeah. As the Wall is screaming at Berlin, Larry says, I don't speak German. But, like, Wall was just, like, grunting and making noises. It wasn't anything purporting to be German at all. And I would say largely because the Wall almost certainly doesn't speak German.
We should say Alex Berlin was on commentary with Larry and
I think we should say Alex Berlin was, in fact, German.
I mean, he was. He still
Yes.
is.
Yes, you're right. He has come out on commentary to accept the Wall's apology. For what? I am not sure. Norman comes out in the very stylish attire of a gi with full pads, gloves, and an enormous cup. Wall just beating on my dude here, and Norman screaming. Apparently, we have not... I think this is the second time on Thunder Finlay has been referred to, Fit Finlay, as being on TV, and we have not seen the man. Not in replay and not in live action, but apparently he was hiding from Fit Finlay on Monday.
Well, I mean, as our good friend Alan Forrell will attest to, not seeing Finlay is, in fact, a very good thing.
Indeed. Wall charges him with a trash can, feet up, can lid to the head, baking sheet, big wiggle, and another trash can shot. Wall cuts him off, goozles Norman. Berlin gets up on the apron and accidentally hits Wall with the belt. Norman escapes with a win yet again.
You took way more notes on that match than I did.
Yes, that was a mistake. Tenay announces the main event for tonight. Says Brett will be on commentary for it. That main event, of course.
I was just going to say, are you not going to tell people what the main event is?
It's the Lee Derby of Package versus Sid.
Yes.
For a shot at Brett, by the way, on Nitro. Which I don't know. I can't remember. Does he announce that now, or is it one of those random? They just mentioned it later in the show, apropos of nothing.
The running bit through the show is Package is afraid to face Sid and is not happy that he has to wrestle on Thunder until he speaks to the powers that be, and they say, if you beat Sid, you can get a shot at Brett.
That's right. He also very throwaway mentions that Crispin Wall will be wrestling one Jushin Thunder Liger on this show.
Well, you say that.
We will have a lot more to say about that when it happens. Lex March. I thought this was a great Lex bit. Is that this announcement happens from Tenay, and it immediately cuts to Lex marching into the TV truck, demanding them replay what Tenay just said. And when they find out he's wrestling young Sidmond, it's just like, oh fuck. And then, yes, as you outlined, he will now spend the rest of the night in various segments trying to escape the building.
Yes.
This is, now I have this mashup where Lex Luger is starring in M. Night Shyamalan's Trap instead of Josh Hartnett. He's just trying to get out of this building at all costs, Hitman style.
I very much had flashbacks to the Edge and Christian bit.
Yes.
With Foley, yeah.
I just thought of a version of Trap that's just called like Traps, because he's flaring his traps while he's trying to run out of the building here. Silver King wants his $10,000 back off Doc after the, God damn it, Vince Russo, the Pinata match from Nitro.
Pinata on a pole.
there are times where people mention matches and I'm like, God, I might check out Nitro just to see what that was. As soon as I heard Pinata match, I was like, I am not watching this. Nope.
You don't want to watch a racially insensitive match with JR parody on commentary?
Now, the one bit that I thought was good in terms of the JR parody here of Oklahoma was to antagonize him. Silver King says, yeah, well, football's for girls. And he goes into a blind rage at this, has to be held back, and says, and it provokes him into saying that Dr. Death will take on Silver King and his buddies 3-on-1 tonight. And at least to Doc's credit, like, it's not like he did the cowardly heel thing of going, what are you doing? You set me up against 3 guys. Doc's like, yeah, I will. I'll kick all your asses. Kaz dubbed interview again with me and Gene, speaking of racially insensitive. Here's the thing. Gene is acknowledging this dubbed promo.
Yes.
Which means Gene can hear it.
Yes.
Which means one of two things. Either Gene is in on the racism.
He almost certainly is, Dave.
Or in canon, Kaz is shoot magical. And is dubbing himself in English.
Well, Dave.
In live action.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I'm not
going to be able to answer it.
Have you ever seen Kaz Hayashi and Jeff Dunham in the same place at the same time?
I have never. Yes, this is very true. Nor Jim Henson, nor any famous puppeteer.
No. But I can say with almost certainty that yes, Gene is probably in on that big racism.
I could say with almost certainty that is Kaz Hayashi's speaking voice. Up next, we have, speaking of Kaz Hayashi versus the Maestro. We see a flashback from Nitro where Gormless Maestro David Flair wore a disguise to attack a woman that was identified as Symphony. So this is the debut of Symphony. And to try and ham up the David Flair is a serial killer bit, Maestro was dead inside the piano, which I thought, I will give them this, was a good reveal.
I thought that was good, yeah.
That was a good reveal. Now, I will take umbrage with... I was talking about what a fucking loser he is, and he's supposed to be a serial killer. And somebody pointed out to me on Discord or Twitter, can't remember which, that in fact the whole thing about a lot of serial killers is they are weedy losers. And this is very true. And it's one of the things I really liked about recent horror smash success at the box office, Longlegs, is that it was all very sinister, but when you got a look at Nicolas Cage's serial killer, he was actually just like a pathetic, weird loser. I get that. But David Flair is such a loser that you can't even imagine he'd be interesting enough to be a serial killer. I'm sorry. It's like, I get that there's a certain amount of like being a sociopathic loser that works for being a serial killer, but see that as like a stop on the road, and he has sped clean past that into such an absolute zero of gormless idiotdom that it is so bleak and black there that no light can escape from this void he is in. He is that much of a loser. I'm sorry. If you're stopping here for me to give you the David Flair redemption arc, you best keep trucking because you're not fucking getting it off me. He gets no credit. No credit. Go fucking wank off a crowbar if you love him that much.
Wow. And there's
a match here.
For once, it's not me burying talents on the show.
No, I'm not burying talent either. I'm burying David Flair. Get it right. The best decision that they ever made is in a couple of months from now when they stick him with two people that have charisma. And a lot of people maybe have rose-tinted glasses about that period, like he was fun and compelling to watch. Was he fuck? That's why Daphne should be in every fucking Hall of Fame going. It's 'cause she fooled you all.
I have a question for you.
Go on.
2024, who would you rather see wrestle? David Flair or Ric Flair?
I would probably say Rick, because it will be short, and I mean, you're going to see something happen. It might be a man expiring in the middle of the ring.
Oh, fucking hell.
And having to be resuscitated via chop. I don't know.
Actually, do you know, I just thought of something. You know the way Conrad does these fucking shows for his own benefit so he can, be wanked off by all the people that listen to his shows?
Yeah.
The next time he runs one of these fucking produce shows, Eric Bischoff needs to do the commentary on the phone line.
Yeah, okay.
Because he can't get the day off work.
Yep. You just hear people trying to call him back in from his break. Tell him he's been sitting on the toilet for too long. Yeah. Right, anyway. Tanay says he's holding a meeting with the powers that be tomorrow, demanding a heavy suspension and fine for Jeff Jarrett for attacking him on Monday. Bret Hart and Goldberg at Starrcade has been announced as being no disqualification. God bless Kaz Hayashi. This very short match is Kaz trying to make something happen and sadly failing. And all the while, gormless idiot David Flair silently goons his crowbar the whole way down the ramp, finally unloading it on Kaz instead of Maestro, who then chases David backstage and gets counted out.
Hang on, did you just say he unloaded onto Kaz?
Yes, after gooning his crowbar the whole way down. You heard correctly.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, the Mike Enos bit is gone. He's not on Thunder anymore. I had to find something else, and the man slowly masturbating his crowbar last week on Thunder.
It appealed
is an
to
image
you.
I'll not soon forget, sir. We've not been this lewd since we talked about Jackie Chan's hog in that one movie on Patreon.
For more hog talk, thelargemanappears.com.
The monthly Hog Talk podcast, yeah. Backstage, Lash and Disco speed into the building, and then we get the first sight of a team that would very much be present in 2000 WCW, and that is Johnny the Bull and Big Vito.
Yep.
They inspect the car. They're looking for the two lads.
I had forgotten just how much of a bumbling duo these two guys were initially.
Yeah. And this is before they get their official name,
Yes.
the Mamalukes. They are just Johnny the Bull Stamboli and Big Vito. Mm-hmm. Did they identify him as Big Vito LaGrasso or just Big Vito?
Big Vito, I
think it's
believe.
just
Big Vito and Johnny the Bull.
And again, I said it last week, but you will be amazed looking at him. Like, they're basically doing a Bebop and Rocksteady from the Turtles routine.
Yes.
Across this whole show, just bumbling goons. But you will be shocked at how eventually they try to take Big Vito seriously. And he gets super over next year as, like, a very established mid-carder, such as it is in WCW in 2000. Anyway... we get a man who identifies himself as a broadcaster and pitchman, Chavo Guerrero, walking in with a box and gets a call from who he describes as a valued customer. And this is foreshadowing what will be one of the worst things I've ever seen later on.
I can safely say that after watching Talking Shopomania, that Chavo is in fact not a broadcaster or a pitchman.
Nor does he have valued customers.
Well, he might.
Well, if he had a customer, he would value them because it would be one of one. This is for sure. Terry Taylor accosts Lex backstage as he's trying to leave, takes his bag off him, but in a very kind of like Bugs Bunny-esque way, he had already thought this was going to happen, and he had swapped bags with Jimmy Hart for a second. So Terry Taylor pinched Jimmy Hart's bag, and then Lex goes back over to Jimmy Hart going, "Oh, thanks for minding my bag," and then walks off. He tries to escape the building, but somebody has flattened his tire. So, like, I do think these bits were funny in isolation, but it does go a bit... I think they do one or two too many.
Yes.
It...
Yeah, but I also think it fits with this packaged character. That, you know, he's just this... As we've said before, he's just this idiot that doesn't realise he's an idiot.
Yeah. Now, this next segment, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely. We have done 90 of these now. Plus, 2 years of pay-per-views. This might be the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
I had no idea. You said to me I was going to see the debut of Buzzkill, and I forgot what Buzzkill was.
Did you not know who that was?
I forgot.
Yeah.
And when I heard the New Age Outlaws sound-alike music...
Yeah, the legally distinct from "Oh, you didn't know."
It's that fucking Vanilla Ice interview, isn't it? There's goes.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Like, this was going to be one of my big takeaways from this show, and I'll say it now. Vince Russo.
You wanted to die?
Well, Vince Russo is literally just taking every idea from current WWF.
Yeah.
Like every character.
Dr. Death is Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Oklahoma is Jim Ross.
Juvi
and now we have
is about to become
Juvi is The Rock.
The Hoos.
Yeah. And now we have Buzzkill as his own brother.
Yes.
And it is Road Dogg, but he's also thrown a bit of dude love in that because he's a hippie and he's dressed in the psychedelics, and he says things like socialism is slavery. God, this is I have what happens written down, and it's so painful to get it out of my throat. Chavo comes out, he opens up his salesman's briefcase, and it's full of tie-dye and incense. And then his box has a disco light in it. Now, I thought it was a bit unfortunate. When things happen, right, and things are mistimed and miscued, I sometimes have a bit of sympathy for it. So when Liz was trying to do the spray gimmick last week or the week before, and it just didn't happen, I felt bad for her. When Hogan tried to do the fireball on Ultimate Warrior, if Hulk Hogan wasn't one of the worst human beings I've ever heard of in my life, I might have felt sorry for him. Because it's an unpredictable thing, and he's an idiot. This spot, I have also never seen a crowd turn faster and more vociferously in terms of, like, they were not a loud or animated. It's not like they were a rowdy ECW you fucked up crowd. This is a crowd that was kind of sitting on their hands, not really reacting huge to anything so far.
They hadn't been given a
but
reason.
Holy fuck, they turned on this, and they were dead right. He takes the disco light out of the box, puts it down in the corner. Bear in mind, this whole time Buzzkill is just for some reason not attacking him and wrestling him. Lets him do it. Leans over to grab like an extension cord, tries to plug in the light. It doesn't work, and clearly the whole crux of this match, and if you can call it that, is built on the light turning on and Buzzkill being distracted by the cool multicolored lights. It doesn't come on at all, and Buzzkill still has to pretend it is coming on and pretend he's distracted by it. And then he puts a headset on him. He lies down, pretends to go for a nap. Chavo tries to pin him. He kicks out. Then Buzzkill just hits him with the briefcase and wins. He then insists on Slick giving him some money. Then he throws it at Chavo, takes the broken light. And Chavo is delighted with that. And all I wrote at the end was, holy shit. That fucking sucked.
I was going to say that Chavo with the tie-dye in his briefcase solidifies our idea that his father is in fact Big Daddy Dudley.
Yes, true. There's a little bit of me that died during this match, Lee.
I would say there's
and
a lot.
I don't think it will ever come back.
By the sounds of it, there's a lot of you that died during this match because you seem pretty broken even just discussing it.
I don't know how good the resolution on my camera is here as we're recording this over Zoom. But there's a little bit less light in my eyes tonight, having seen this match. And I'll never be able to unsee this match. And I want everybody at home to understand what it is we go through to bring you this program. This is the kind of stuff that we suffer through so that you won't. Or that at least if you are a mad person and are watching these shows along with us,
Being forewarned.
that you're at least forewarned. Yeah. Yes. 100%. This genuinely, if we were doing a ranking of like the top 10 awful segments in the history of this show, this might be my number one with a bullet. Now, it has a contender on next week's Thunder that we'll talk about. But fuck. It was just, I'm so mad that I had to watch this and then I had to talk about it. Let's move on. Although, actually, no, to be fair, I get super mad at another match later in this show. But we'll talk about it. We get Benoit with Gene. He said he spent 6 months in the Heart Dungeon and then he got sent straight to Japan. And with all this experience he has gathered wrestling around the world, he can say safely that Liger is the most technically sound wrestler he's ever faced. Medusa with Evan strongly implies she's gonna fuck him after they wrestle. So there you are, Evan. Right, we have got the 1,000-mile-an-hour Nitro recap.
Yep.
Sid and Goldberg are buddies. They beat up the Outsiders. Sid's promo, I'll bet you loved, when he's walking out. And Sid, the most, like, no bullshit, I'm not dancing around it, literally walks down to the ring just going, there's a new babyface in town.
It's very much like, my status has changed. I'm a face now.
Yeah. I am officially referring to this team as the Men.
The Man.
Because we've got the Man and the Millennium Man. They are the Men. That's how I'm referring to them, or at least that's how it feels in my heart.
They
I
are
would be referring
demented,
to them.
more like.
Yes. There is a brawl backstage. Sid gets locked in his dressing room, immediately kicks the door open, for no cell shall hold this man. Brett helps Goldberg. Lex is with Creative Control. Creative Control are now tag team champions, by the way.
Yes, they are.
Liz gets embarrassed.
Liz is
in
quite
a mud bath. She gets thrown into a mud bath.
Quite literally in the mud.
Yes, quite literally in the mud. Good to know. Vince Russo is here to protect the honor of women by immediately bringing in mud bath gimmicks. Sting then pushes Lex in, which is a little bit funnier. Disco and Lash. Again, another Scooby-Doo segment where they find Meng's dressing room and switch the sign that says Meng with the sign that says Disco and Lash. I don't know why the two of them that have just now formed an alliance have established dressing rooms for just the two of them.
But also, you have to
this
realize
is very much it's
the Mamalukes are
WCW.
idiots.
Don't think too hard.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So we see, what else do we have? Jarrett joins forces with the Outsiders. Declares that the belt is his. We see in a flashback from Nitro as well that Stacy has debuted. The Nitro girls are all fighting. A few of them have been fired. Because I was reading that AC Jazz was among the people backstage at next week's ECW. So a few of them have gone, but the remaining ones are all fighting. We see our good buddy, I think it's Marinara, isn't it? Gets put in a body bag.
Yes.
Yeah. Gene goes out on the town with the Mamalukes, and the Mamalukes get covered in sauce by Disco and Lash, which is quite a memorable image of the two of them, I have to say. Do you want to talk about Lex psyching himself up?
Is at this point where he has the phone call with the powers to be?
No, this is the bit where he's by himself and he's freaking out. And then he's like, why am I freaking out? I'm the total package.
Yeah, he's gassing himself up backstage,
Yeah. He's just talking to himself, I'm the total package. And he goes, oh, I feel much better. Outside of the room.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Just like, oh, I forgot. I'm really cool. This is really good. Gene talks to Sid. Sid is playing with an action figure. They are going to be in a match that is variously described across the next couple of weeks as a powerbomb match and a master of the powerbomb match. Mm-hmm. Him and Nash. And essentially, Sid threatens to pull all of Nash's limbs off. And that's cool.
What we know about Kevin Nash's limbs is that probably wouldn't be too difficult if you actually tried.
Yeah. True enough. You see Lex doing a YouTuber face as he calls a cab over the phone. The Mamalukes are just threatening some geek and then they throw him into a walk-in refrigerator. Then we get our 3-on-1 handicap match of Dr. Death versus Silver King, Viano 4 and Viano 5. We get a flashback to Oklahoma being covered in sauce by the Misfits. Larry...
I was going to say, this next bit might have been the most offensive bit because there's a backstory.
This broke me.
There's a backstory to Oklahoma being covered in the sauce.
Okay, so talk about this. This wasn't the part that broke me, but it's
okay.
It's the audio nightmare we have here that got me.
So Oklahoma, as you said, was covered in his own barbecue sauce on Nitro. And as he joins the commentary desk, Tanay says, oh, you look different. And it's at this point that Oklahoma says, yes, my barbecue sauce cured me.
Yep. We also get, as part of the angle we talked about in The Observer, Larry gets annoyed at the revolving door on commentary and storms off. Mm-hmm. The Vianos, one thing is, like, the Vianos really didn't have their bros back here because they're politely waiting around for Doc to finish kicking Silver King's ass before they help him.
Yep.
Then Vamp comes out. Oklahoma tries to tackle him, falls over while he's trying to tackle him because Ed Ferrara's a fucking moron. Silver King takes the check because of course, for no reason at all, this $10,000 check, they're just walking around with it outside the ring. Silver King sees it, takes the check and bails, and Doc wins. Stone Cold Dr. Death wins.
Dr. Steve Beth Williams, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
We
go to the back.
The whole segment was fucking dog shit.
It's actually, I was thinking of a different segment when I said this broke me. It's actually the one that's coming up in a bit.
Okay.
To the back. Lex is trying to sneak out of the building again. The Mamalukes are like singing at a trash can. He directs them towards Disco. Silver King, as he's directing them to where Disco is, Silver King runs in the background and gets into Lex's taxi and speeds off. What I find very funny is the amount of time he tries to leave the building and the implication that Lex is just, he's scared to death of Sid, but he also really just doesn't want to walk. Because like he literally could just walk out of the building and be gone.
Yeah.
He could just leave. And he's just like, no. Like, unless it's private transport. I'm not getting a bus. I'm not walking with the plebs. Next we get Jushin Thunder Liger versus Chris Benoit. And you might say to me, Dave, how could you not enjoy this segment? On paper, this seems like it would be a very enjoyable match. Well, I tell you, dear listener, it's because immediately, Psicosis, La Parca, and Juventud Guerrera come out. Juvi is in the sling. And pour one out because it is the debut of Juvi on commentary. which I am so sorry to tell all of you, and I had to immediately apologise to Lee as well, knowing that this was the day. This is not an exception. This is something that would continue for a long time. It's not all the time, but it's a lot of Juvi commentary for the dying days of WCW.
Yay. I mean, he's not good. His English is not good.
He is,
well, actually,
and in spite of that,
I'll apologise. His English is fine for second language, but
yes,
it's also his second language, and he's been put on commentary as a joke.
And he's extremely obnoxious.
Yes.
To the point where I could hardly tell you a thing that happens in this match.
Mm-hmm.
He's claiming that Liger injured him. In fact, what happened was he had smashed Liger with a tequila bottle and took his title because he is now the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. I am very thankful, by the way, because at first I was like, did they fly Liger in at expense for this? I'm very thankful to say he was doing multiple dates down in Mexico.
Yes.
At the time, so it wasn't just a stupid feud with Juvi and a waste of a match with Benoit.
I mean, it still was a waste of a match with Benoit.
He also at one point clearly says a slur because it gets, and we have the TV recording of this show, and it gets censored, whatever he says. Cool, yeah. It's at least a relief to fans of New Japan Pro Wrestling that he would drop the belt next week. Commentary citing it's an injury, and he is injured, but the main reason that he gets punished by dropping the title is that he gets a DUI and no shows Nitro.
Isn't this the part where Juvi wins the belt and Psychosis loses it?
Yes, I think that might be what happens. Forgive me for not wanting to involve myself in any more lore surrounding this.
I think Liger beats Psychosis on Nitro and is just declared IWGP Junior Champ.
It would make sense that like Juvi doesn't show and they're like, what the fuck are we going to do? And it's not the first time somebody has lost a belt that they weren't the holder of.
No.
We're going to get Benoit versus Nash on Monday and versus Scott Hall in a ladder match at Starrcade. There is a superplex at one point from Liger, which is very impressive. And that snapped me back into the match for all of 5 seconds before Juvi's minions run in for the DQ. And then the babyfaces fight them off and stand shoulder to shoulder at the end. What a fucking waste. I was looking at the thing that was getting me through the first hour of this show was seeing that this was coming up. And yeah, no, fuck it. Fuck this show. Gene talks to Buff Bagwell about wrestling Meng. He says he is going to be a roadblock, not a speed bump for Meng. Then we see the payoff of the sign switcheroo on the dressing rooms as the Mamalukes walk into Meng's dressing room and he kills them. Lex, his plans to escape are once again thwarted by Terry Taylor. And then we get Buff Bagwell versus Meng. We learn that the Powers That Be have set up a Dustin Rhodes versus Meng match. Larry says the Powers That Be want to squash any individuality on the roster. True. Fuck all happens in this match. Bagwell accidentally takes out the ref. The Mamalukes come out. He kills both of them. So that's, I think, maybe the third time they've been killed on this show. Mm-hmm. Twice on the night and once in replay. Buff accidentally blockbusters Vito and Meng chokes Buff out and wins. This was not the Lex Meng match that we loved so much last week. This was the entire antithesis of that. Then we get the most directly perverted Gene has been in our entire run so far.
What the fuck, like?
Mona is back and immediately includes Gene of looking at her cleavage, which he was. Now, when I say Gene Okerlund was looking at Mona's cleavage, Jean was maybe 3/4 of an inch from technically motorboating her. That's how much he was staring at her cleavage.
I mean, the camera like pans to them, and he's literally eyes down, looking down her top.
Yeah. But is indignant at the suggestion that he was.
Yeah.
Which, the indignance did crack me a little bit, but it was horrible, creepy old man leering. Jeff Jarrett says he has come looking for Dustin and Goldberg, but neither of them are here, conveniently. Commercial for Starcades. We see the Mamalukes licking their wounds and said, you know what? I could really go for a cheese sandwich right about now. And they decide to go out for a cheese sandwich. We then get the mixed tag team match I think the whole world was asking for, Lee. Evan Courageous and Medusa versus Jeff Jarrett and Mona. Tenay makes sure to repeat at the start of this when Jeff Jarrett is coming out that he's going to have his meeting tomorrow with Turner, and that he's going to have all the info on WCW Saturday Night this week. Hey, Lee, Jeff Jarrett in a segment with two blondes who are being objectified by an announcer. What a reach for this character, I have to say.
Yeah.
Again, you want to talk about somebody who only ever has one set of ideas and just takes them? Is like, we are just running back Jeff Jarrett again here. So what do I have written for this? Fuck all. Jeff leaves Mona alone and wanders around outside. Jeff says Tenay better show up to that meeting, threatening him. Mona holds her own wrestling Evan. Reminds you of the fact that Mona, while green, is still much more interesting than a good proportion of the WCW roster at this time. Mona actually manages to fight the two of them off for a while, and just as she starts getting good crowd reactions from this crowd that are not giving many reactions to anything, Medusa hits one German suplex and Evan hits a corkscrew splash for the win. Jeff gets in, of course, to berate Mona. Sorry.
I was just going to say, before we get to the payoff of this segment, isn't it interesting?
Payoff.
Isn't it interesting to think that WCW had Medusa as this veteran, very good wrestler. They had Mona. They had Gorgeous George, who showed some real, actual acumen for wrestling when she was in there. Now, I know the whole thing with Savage was weird at this point already. They had Trish Stratus backstage. They would bring in Rhonda Singh over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
They had access to a variety of women wrestlers. Brandy Alexander, as we said, was showing good promise.
Yeah.
And yet, they don't have a women's division going forward.
In fact, would go on to point out that it's a one-woman division.
Yes, that is a quote that comes forward next week when they, in fact, debut new women on the roster.
Yeah. You also have just debuted Midnight.
Yes.
You have Asia around,
yeah.
Speaking of stolen ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thought I'd bring that up. Just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah. Jeff gets in to berate Mona. She drop kicks him in the back and he flattens her with a guitar, obviously. They do a video package that's a speed run of Brett's career so far, and fuck, it's bleak.
It really was.
Yeah. This man has had like a US title reign and is now the world champion, and you're still looking at that going, fuck, what a waste.
Yeah, they did their best to clean it up as best they could, but it was still a fucking mess in the package.
Yeah, it really was. Unless this was literally your first night watching World Championship Wrestling, you were like, yeah, well, this was all dog shit. I remember it. We go to an interview with the Revolution, who have seceded from these United States. They said in their country they are huge athletic supporters. The end of this promo was cut off by dumb sound issues on our recording. So sadly, we couldn't get this, what I'm sure was a very mediocre Perry Saturn attempt at humor to end this promo.
Mm-hmm.
We see Disco and Lash getting ready for their match. I did laugh because I know there's a little bit of they try very much for the next while to get Lash to do some Jericho rip-off stuff. Now, I will say, the name the Ayatollah of Shrimp Crayola did make me laugh. I'm weak.
Yeah, no,
I like a good pun.
it was a good bit. I also like the bit where Disco goes, "Yeah, what's the name of that move you do with the punches?" And he gives it the name. He goes, "Yeah, don't do that. I do the dancing here."
Yeah. It will get a little bit more on the nose. If you didn't already know he was doing Jericho, he would essentially end up, as part of his ring gear, having the sparkly shirt from the Jericho debut Raw. He hammer that fucking home.
He's just missing the Monday night fucking LaRue t-shirt, basically.
Yeah. Well, we had Lash Vegas t-shirts, remember?
We did. That's true.
Yeah. So we get a tag team match. Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn versus Disco and Lash. Dean comes out, and I think what we all want on our TV wrestling that's going to keep us all awake is Dean Malenko talking about American nationalism. His words, not mine.
What's not to love about Dean Malenko talking about America's history of its nation?
Yes. He says that it's total stupidity to be proud of Canadian heritage and be American. Shane calls Disco Joe Pesci, which did make me laugh. Says Disco and all his people are exactly the same. Excellent work, Vince Russo. The Mamalukes come out again. Perry calls Johnny Rocky Balboa, which Johnny sells in a way that makes me think he doesn't know who Rocky Balboa is. They run in.
Him and CM Punk.
Yeah, true. They run in, start fighting. Asia low blows both of them. The Revolution clear house. I have written their team name down as Disco Gumbo. So Disco Gumbo attack and the bell rings again. Oh, by the way, yeah, when two non-participants in the match attacked two participants in the match, the bell rang as if that was the start of the match. Then the Mamalukes get cleared out and the bell rings a second time. Revolution all over Disco Gumbo. Amona, Medusa and Evan Courageous three-way is happening on Monday. If either woman wins, they get a shot at the Cruiserweight title. I know exactly the joke that just formed in your head after that last sentence. He is fucking completely corpsing on...
I had no idea that was made official during that match. And the fact that you just went... Evan, Medusa and Mona are having a three-way. And I was like, what the what? I was like, did I miss that segment?
Keep up with the broadcast. If either woman wins the match, they get a shot at the Cruiserweight title. And if Evan wins, tough luck, neither of them will. Lash fires up on both men, goes for the whiplash, gets blocked. Everybody comes in, big schmoz. Douglas, of course, as he is wont to do, gets up from commentary. Lash confronts Asia. Shane cracks him in the back of the head with the cast, rolls him in, cloverleaf, and a win for the Revolution. Our main event is up next. It is the heavyweight title number one contenders match for Monday. The total package versus Sid Vicious. Brett is out on commentary. Lex comes out. He tries to flatter Sid and then tries to threaten Sid when that flattery clearly wasn't begging him off. He says, we can do it the easy way or the hard way. And then Charles Robinson noticed he had like a loaded set of nooks in his trunks and takes them out. Sid attacks, hits a big old boot in the corner. Luger hits a low blow that it was literally physically impossible for Charles Robinson not to see, but he didn't see it nonetheless. Elizabeth comes out as Lex takes advantage. They do the slowest double down I've ever seen in my life. Liz tries to spray Lex. They play... now, what I did think was clever is they played into the gimmick that she doesn't know how to use the spray. Because she tried to spray, it didn't work, and he immediately robbed it, sprayed Sid. Blind Sid power bombs the ref by accident. Lex rolls him up. Slick appears out of thin air and counts the pin. So Lex gets a shot at Brett on Monday. Sid then immediately recovers his sense of sight, power bombs Lex, and this may be one of the better power bomb cells I've ever seen, because the best way I can describe this is as soon as Lex hits the mat, he goes stiff as a plank of timber.
One person who didn't have to sell a power bomb?
Who?
Charles Robinson, because he got fucking dropped on his neck.
Yeah.
Sid took that blind.
He'll have an injury list as long as Vampiro off that choke slam.
Sid took that blind gimmick to heart because he did not protect Charles on that fucking powerbomb.
Yeah. Okay.
Hell of a show.
What did you think of that? Hell being the operative word, yeah. Right. Overall thoughts, winners and losers.
There's so much happening on these shows now. Like, I know that the thing people said about Early Thunder was it was very boring and nothing happened.
I miss boring.
There's way too much happening on these shows. Like,
I'll give you the segment count for this 2 hours.
Go for
36.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm being generous. I think there's a couple that I classed as one segment that were 2 segments properly.
There's good stuff in here. Sid is still like an incredible babyface, except now he's actually a babyface. Goldberg continues to be the most over man on the roster, even when he's not on the shows. I like that they're giving Benoit a sustained push at this point. Other than that, like, there's so much happening and a lot of it's not good.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that's not good is a promise that it will continue to get worse.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that you've singled out is good. We know, at least in the Benoit case, is extremely temporary.
It's like watching the shows is exhausting in a way I didn't think it was possible for a show to be exhausting.
It's mind-numbingly tiring. I
got to the point where I was watching the show and I think I had maybe 20 minutes or 18 minutes left on the show, and I still think there was like 5 segments.
Yeah.
Like two matches and 5 segments or something to close like the last couple of minutes on the show. It's insanity.
Yeah. As for winners and losers,
Sid and Package remain 2 of my favorites on the show. This is going to sound really harsh considering the praise I've given him recently. Joe comes across like a real loser now.
Who?
Bret Hart, because he gets no reaction from these crowds. And I think a lot of it is down to his music.
Yeah. But also, like, it's weird because they finally crowned him as the champion, and we said, like, they really should have done it sooner. And, like, one thing we can say is that at least Russo acknowledged that he needed to put the belt on Bret. It was long overdue. That said, he immediately feels like an afterthought. He didn't feel like this dominant top of the card champion coming out to observe his next challenger, this big badass. He felt like, oh, here's Bret. He feels like a transitional champion.
It's mad. Like, it's like these WCW crowds just don't care about Bret Hart.
Yeah,
and that's what it feels like.
They've had all the reason to care about him kicked out of them for the last 2 years. We talked about it at the end of Mayhem. Is like he came into WCW as the hottest character in the entire
business
pro wrestling industry. Like, again, we said you couldn't bump Sting and Hogan and what they were like, that whole thing, because they've been building it for so long. But you needed to work on getting it to Bret as quickly as possible once that was all resolved. And you didn't. And I know there were injury issues, but also when he was there, it was dog shit a lot of the time.
As for real losers on the show, like, the Oklahoma stuff is like, it's so offensive. Anything involving women on the show is pretty damn offensive. It's
Juvi.
Juvi being put out there as a fucking joke that Juvi wasn't necessarily in on is insane to see, because can you imagine if that was done today?
Yeah.
But yet, here it is, like, it's there on film. This man was booked to do, promos and commentary as a fucking laugh.
Yeah. As a laugh at, not a laugh with.
Not a laugh with.
Yeah. Yeah, a spiteful, vindictive,
But yeah, no, it's like I say, I'm enjoying Sid, I'm enjoying Package for what he is. It's good to see people like Meng and Benoit, like different people getting a push. Jeff Jarrett is remaining all over the show, and that has both good and negative aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot. Like, there's just so much.
Right, well, the finish counter by Ludwig Borga gives you 9 matches, 3 clean finishes, 2 disqualifications or countouts, 3 interference leading to a finish, and 1 other, which is via briefcase. This has been Days of Thunder. Thank you very much for listening to another episode. We'll be back on the free feed with Voices of Wrestling in 2 weeks. We'll be back behind the paywall at largemanappears.com next week, so tune in for more fun and games. Talk to you again very soon, folks. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. To keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us, you can follow us on Twitter at WCW ThunderPod or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at The Day to Dave on Twitter, and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week, and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.